The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. I just want to read one quote from this book and then ask you a question about this and then ask you a question about Nixon.
Sure.
This is from Lyndon Johnson, The Man, Chapter 1. I didn't know a lot about Lyndon B. Johnson.
Quite a colorful character.
Quite a character. Very descriptive language about him when he started to smoke again, and his hair got long, and he was unkempt. But this is something that you write. Lyndon, quote, "Nothing could obscure the picture. Lyndon Johnson was an overbearing, coarse, ruthless, sociopathic, low-life, power-mad monster. He was a consummate politician, therefore could charm people when he had to, but the mask could easily slip and often did." Is that not true of many politicians, or was he worse?
No, he was worse. I attribute in this book at least 18 murders to him before he got to JFK. Murders to cover up corruption, murders to cover up voter fraud in his 48 election. He was very definitely a sociopath, a functioning lunatic. By the way, in the oral histories of his aides, Bill Moyers, George Reedy, his press secretary, even they refer to him as a lunatic. So, for example, the plastic bubble top on Kennedy's limousine is removed on November 22nd, 1963, not on the orders of the Secret Service, not on the orders of JFK, on the orders of Bill Moyers, who's working as an aide to Vice President Lyndon Johnson. And Moyers, who's an ordained Baptist minister, says to the Secret Service agent, who I interviewed, "Get that goddamn bubble top off of the limousine." Now, the bubble top's not bulletproof, but it's opaque, so you couldn't get a clear headshot if the bubble top was in place, and it had just rained.
What got you motivated to focus on this issue?
I'd been a Goldwater zealot, so I knew Johnson was a crook. The Bobby Baker scandal, the Billy Sal Estes scandal. Those are his motives. In other words, by November 26, 1963, he's on the verge of being charged in two massive scandals, two corruption scandals. Bobby Baker is the Secretary of Senate. He's a bagman. Billy Sal Estes is a flamboyant Texas wheeler dealer who has these huge federal agricultural contracts, and he's kicking back to LBJ. So Johnson knows he's on the verge of being dumped from the 64 ticket, and he's probably going to face federal charges and go to prison. That is his motive. Now, the means, he convinces Kennedy to go to Texas to bind up the wounds between the bourbon, more conservative wing of the Democrat Party and the progressive wing of the party. And then it is his henchman, John Connally, then the governor of Texas, who says, well, the motorcade has to drive through Dealey Plaza. Now, Kennedy's going from the Dallas-Fort Worth airport to the Merchandise Mart, neither one of which is in the city of Dallas. So why is the motorcade going in and out of the city of Dallas? Well, to take Kennedy through Dealey Plaza, where they violate the Secret Service manual. The car comes to a full stop, creating the opportunity for John Kennedy to be shot from both the front and the back, as we now know, by multiple shooters in an elaborately orchestrated plan to destroy his presidency. And so Lyndon Johnson can avoid prison.
Avoiding prison, that was the primary motivation.
Well, Drew Pearson, who is without any question, the most influential columnist of the time, syndicated columnist, has a column for publication on November 23rd, a Sunday, that says that Johnson took a massive bribe to deliver a defense contract for General Dynamics. That's the end of LBJ. That column gets spiked because LBJ is president by the close of business on November 22nd, 1963. So his motive is to avoid prison and complete political ruin. Now, I'm not alleging in my book that Johnson's acting alone. These Central Intelligence Agencies deeply involved in Kennedy's murder. We now know that from the hearings that my friend Anna Paulina Luna has conducted in the Congress. The organized crime is definitely involved. The House Select Committee on Assassinations declares that in their final report in 1987. Big Texas Oil's deeply involved in this plot. So many people had their own individual motives for Kennedy's murder, But one man is the common spoke between all of them, Lyndon Johnson. And I use fingerprint evidence just to prove that at least one of the shooters is Malcolm Mack Wallace. That's who's shooting from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository building. He leaves his fingerprints there. We know they're his prints because he was convicted of murder in Texas in 1951. He killed a man who was trying to blackmail Lyndon Johnson. He went to trial. He was represented at trial by John Cofer, who's Johnson's personal attorney. He's convicted of first-degree murder, and he gets probation in Texas for murder. He's the shooter from the 6th floor. There's 6 eyewitnesses who identify a man who meets the physical description of Malcolm Wallace, a medium build, balding, glasses, expert marksman in the Marine Corps. He is the shooter from the 6th floor. But there are, as we now know from the new documentary put out by Paramount, there are shooters both in front and in back of Kennedy. He shot from both the front and the back, and that is concealed. The doctors now, some 60 years later, all admit, yes, we saw wounds consistent with his being shot from the front and the back. The wound in his throat, which we're told is an exit wound, is an entry wound. They perform a tracheotomy immediately, so you can't tell. All the doctors see a blowout wound in the back of Kennedy's head that would indicate that he was shot from the front. But by the time his body gets to the Bethesda Medical Center, that has been patched. In Texas, by state law, you have to have an autopsy when there's a murder. Kennedy's body is removed at gunpoint by Secret Service agents in a face down with the Texas Rangers, so they can remove his body, and the autopsy is not done in Texas, it's done in Bethesda, Maryland.
This is James O'Keefe. You know me for exposing the truth and holding the powerful accountable. But today, I want to talk to you about protecting your own freedom, starting with your finances. Right now, the warning signs are everywhere. The Fed continues to print money, interest rates and inflation remain high, and everywhere you look, your hard-earned money just doesn't go as far as it used to. That's not your imagination. It's today's reality. If central banks are loading up on gold, why not you? That's why I've now partnered with American Independence Gold. They're veteran-owned, and proceeds from every sale go to Tunnel to Towers, supporting our first responders and heroes. And listen, right now, the first 50 customers get a $1,000 credit towards their account. That's right, $1,000 to help you get started protecting your wealth with real, physical gold. Don't wait for the next crisis. Go to O'KeefeMediaGold.com, that's OKEEFE Mediagold.com, or 833-324-GOLD. Again, that's O'KeefeMediaGold.com or 833-324-GOLD. Take action, get the facts, and protect your future, because freedom isn't given, it's secured. This is James O'Keefe. Don't just watch history, own a piece of it.